Hi everybody, I read 15 books in November, which I am shocked about. So let's get into some of those reviews. The first book unfortunately wasn't one that I thoroughly enjoyed, and this was Gwendy's Final Task by Stephen King and Richard Chismar. This is the third and final installment in this trilogy, and honestly I think I should have just left it at the first book. So we are once again following Gwendy, who has been given the care again of the bottom box. This time she is tasked to destroy it at all costs, and to do that she needs to try and get a trip to space. So there were some heartwarming moments in this one, don't get me wrong, some really tender and touching conversations and reflections between characters, but overall the story was typically forgettable for me. And I think I should have just left reading it at book one, which is what I enjoyed, which is what I think of more when I'm thinking of this franchise. The second book, I barely remember, if anything, and I think the third book's going to probably fall into that category for me. So moving on, I read A Book Sirens arc. This is a short story by Aria Mays called You're Mine. It was a Halloween themed spicy FF romance. So the premise is one Halloween night, one haunted house, two best friends with very different plans. What could go wrong? I had so much fun with this one and was really surprised by the plot twist at the end. It really gave it that extra oomph, and it was so far out of the realm of possibility for anything that I would have expected, but it didn't feel like silly or completely random or anything like that. The whole book had that kind of vibe and tone. It just still knocked me out like a sucker punch, but in a good way. I was giggling and blushing throughout the whole thing, and the playlist that they included, I think it was at the start, was really good and properly set the tone for the story. I could really see the vision as the author must have felt, you know, writing, listening to these songs. It was great. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, and I forgot to mention that Gwendy's Final Task I gave a 1.5 star. Next up, I read 2 books back to back from the library. I think I read this kind of majorly whilst I was on my lunch break at one time. So the first one is a children's fantasy story, very folktale, fairy tale-esque. The Owl Witch by Miriam Darman. In a solitary house on a secluded island lives a woman known as the Owl Witch. She is someone who is longing for companionship. This was a bit of a random pickup for me, I will admit. The cover definitely drew me in, and I remember noticing it as when it was new stock like some months prior and wanting to read it. So I just thought, you know, let me just take my chances and enjoy this during a lunch break. The stunning cover that originally drew me in didn't fail to deliver on a really good story on the inside. I was left smiling to myself after being transported into this beautifully illustrated, whimsical, fable-esque story, and I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The other book that I mentioned that I read during a lunch break was a non-fiction in the children's section, and it's called The Power of Welcome: Real Life Refugee and Migrant Stories by about 6 different people sharing their own stories. It was a graphic novel non-fiction, which I've come to realise I really enjoy over the last couple of months, especially if it's like biographical in theme. At the heart of it, this non-fiction piece explores the struggle of displaced people and gives us a little insight into the conflict that this particular person's talking about, where they're from, and, you know, everything that happened with them having to flee their country, the people they left behind if they had to, and kind of where they are now. I thought it was a brilliant collection of real life experiences, and experiences that myself gratefully hasn't ever had to go through. So to have a bit of compassion and, you know, want to know and educate myself on these matters, it was helpful that this was in such a gentle way. It was simplified, it was easy to read. As I say, a brief yet detailed overview and background of the conflict of each person's country, but it is very child appropriate, I would say. You just get in the facts and a little bit of an understanding, which I really appreciated. That one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Showing a different volume because I don't have any of the volumes that I'm going to be talking about right now or later on in this video, but I do have this one, and that was my foray into Lumberjanes with volume Where Beware the Kitten Holy. This is by N.D. Stevenson and some other people that joined in with this creation. This is, you know, comic children's adventure, And at this all girls summer camp, things are not what they seem at all. You've got three-eyed foxes, secret caves, and a group of really cool friends looking to discover and explore all of these strange mysteries happening around this camp. So I've been wanting to read this for the longest time, pretty much straight up when it came out. I just never got a chance to. So I was so happy to finally try out this series. As you can see by me holding up the third volume, I am intending to continue on with it. It was even better a story than I was expecting. It reminded me of a mixture of a couple things. I had Adventure Time in my head, I had Gravity Falls, and I had Summer Camp Island. Also gave me this like gentle nostalgic nudge, and of course I loved all the characters. So yeah, fantastic series so far. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I'm going to just whiz briefly through because I've already done a dedicated review for it. I was gratefully on the Black Crow PR book tour for this one, and that is A Rather Vengeful Accord by Danielle Knight. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Please go ahead and check out that video that I mentioned if you have any more interest in it, you want to know a little bit what it's about. I had a great time reading this. It was so good. 5 out of 5 stars. The graphic novels, the comics, I finally continued with volume 3 of Something is Killing the Children. This is a horror comic book and it is dark. Really dark. So to be as brief as possible while still giving you a little bit of a semblance of what the main goal in this book is, we have the House of Slaughter, the big bosses, coming down into the town now to do a cleanup basically, and they're willing to clean up this situation by any means necessary, and if that means just outright killing innocent civilians. Oh man, this was harrowing. It was fantastic. It was disturbing and chilling. And it also feels like it's wrapped up like a main story arc. So I'd be intrigued to see how volume 4 evolves what already feels like it's been closed. I'm interested to see where Erica, our main character, goes next. And kind of the lay of the land she explores. We'll have to see. Another book that I've already done a dedicated review for and was gratefully on the Hear Our Voices book tour for is Our Vicious Oaths by N.E. Davenport. Again, this was another 5-star review, so definitely check out that video if you want some more information on it. I get really rambly and really overexcited in that one, so just bear with me. A little bit later on in the month, I glided through to a children's fantasy story. And it's the first of a series called The Wild Magic Trilogy by Celine Kernan. And this was book 1, Begone the Raggedy Witches, which I have been meaning to read again for most of this year, pretty much, with the whole trilogy most of this year, when I first kind of stumbled on it at work at the library. So as I say, it's fantasy, it's children's fiction, it's adventure. And what happens is on the night when Auntie passes away, Mup encounters witches for the first time. Her mum is being lured away across the border into the darker witches realm, which is news to Mup. She's like, what the heck is going on? That fails, and instead, kind of like in retaliation and try to further lure her mum over to the other side, they kidnap Mup's dad. Mup and her family sets out on an adventure to rescue her dad and go into the witch's burrow, which she realizes quite quickly has her mum in a different kind of way. Her personality shifts and she's not quite the person Mup has always known. Our young protagonist, Mup, I keep saying her name, was so fantastic. She had such a lovely sense of justice and just wanting to do good and what's right for people, basically. She just wanted to help out however she could and really was outspoken when people were displaying cruelty or unkindness to others, especially when it was unnecessary. I loved Mup's brother, Little Tipper. He was so adorable, and I really adored Badger, who was like their trusty knight old man dog. He was so cute as well and just wanted to do good by the family and look after them. Does, again, as I mentioned with this book, it does feel like it wrapped up quite nicely by the end of this book, and it is a trilogy, so once again I'm intrigued to see how the story follows on, if they're going to be more contained stories in each one, sort of like I can only remember the 4th book, The Storm of Sisters, kind of has its own contained story in each book, but you know, it's about the same family, so I'm wondering if they're going to do that. I'll be intrigued to see how that continues. This one I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So I read a couple of Junji Ito horror manga this month as well, which was really nice because I feel like he's one of those authors and creators that just pull me back into strange, wonderful, not so wonderful, but creative outlets. And I just feel like it resets my reading, which is a strange thing to say considering how dark the topics in his books are. Anyway, I jumped in with Black Paradox. This is about 4 people who intend to end their lives and they decide to do it all together. They meet on a website called Black Paradox, but unknowingly to them, even as they search for the perfect death, they fatefully end up opening a door, a portal that leads to a rather bizarre destiny. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a captivating horror sci-fi blend, which is new to me for Junji Ito. Usually it's typically just like body horror, gore, that sort of thing, which I usually love, but seeing a little extra element in there was quite entertaining, and I feel like it added more of the depth and complexity to the story. The whole vibe was creepy, sinister, unsettling and uncomfortable to say the least. Basically everything that Ito does perfectly well and what I've come to expect and enjoy from his works. And yeah, this is definitely up there with one of the books that I'll be thinking about for a while. Moving on to, once again, a more light-hearted read with volume 2 of Lumberjanes, and this one was called Friendship to the Max. Again, adventure, graphic novel, a lot of fun going on in this one. We're jumping back into the crazy summer camp that we met in volume 1. We have monsters, magic, summer's only just starting, so there's so much to explore and unpack with the rest of the story. At least I'm anticipating. A 4 out of 5 stars, and again, I had so much fun reading this. It's so light-hearted, it's so much fun. I was really shocked by where the story went, and it definitely feels like it's kind of building up more of a connected narrative and story arc going forward. I think this is quickly becoming one of my favourite graphic novel series, so that's a bonus. That's fantastic. I knew I'd enjoy it, I just didn't know I'd be enjoying these books as much as I am. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited because I finally finished V. Castro's The Pink Agave Hotel and Other Stories, which was kindly sent to me digitally by Black Crow PR. I was on book tour for that as well, but I feel like in May or June, and I just talked about my feelings so far whilst I was reading the book, and then I just kind of, it took me ages to get to because I was reading other things and I just kept dipping out of it, dipping back in, dipping out again, all of that sort of thing. Anyway, it's a erotica horror, which I don't really think I've read that much of before, so like as in the combination of it, that was intriguing to me. I ended up giving it a total of 3 out of 5 stars, and it's a series of interconnected, I guess, short stories. The focus book is about Valentina, who is the leader of a creature cohort who manages hotel guests until she's enlightened to a death on her property, which bring up a whole deal of trouble and attention. To avoid exposure and to basically bring up the existence of monsters to the wider world, which she obviously doesn't want to do, she partners with the grieving friend of the deceased in order to try and solve the murder. Unbeknownst to her, she's going to become absolutely riveted by him. You see that very early on from the story, like she becomes besotted, and that obviously clouds a lot of her judgment going forward in the story. This had a hedonistic kind of storytelling that left me really giddy when I was reading it. Particular scenes jump into mind right now, and I was really intrigued by the main story where we're following Valentina and her actual agave hotel. I was confused with how disconnected the other stories surrounding like the main plot felt. They almost felt a little bit like unnecessary and just added a confusing layer. And I think that's probably part of the reasoning of why it took me so long to finish this, because it's not a long story at all. It's not an overly big book, but I'd come out of one of those short stories and be like, that doesn't really necessarily make sense. Yeah, it was a bit weird. I feel like that could have been its own thing, and then this could have just been its own short story of the Pink Agave Hotel, and I would have enjoyed that much more than I ended up enjoying it, if that makes sense. The next book I read was another horror manga by Junji Ito, and that was The Dissolving Classroom. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and originally I thought it was like the beginning of a series. I thought this was like volume 1 or something, and I should have realized, you know, he doesn't really do continuous sequences, so why would this be any different? And it doesn't say volume 1 anywhere. But I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't pick this up straight away, because I didn't really want to commit to a new series, which is ridiculous because I'm always starting new series and never finishing them, so why would this be any different, right? Anyway, we are following a pair of really twisted siblings who cause all sorts of awful things to happen wherever they go. Really entertaining, and I enjoyed how connected and orientated around these siblings the stories felt, because they do read as short stories in themselves, but they're all very much interlinked and connected and have something to do with these creepy ass siblings. The plot itself though was far more detailed than I was expecting, and I really enjoyed it. It was creepy and sinister, and basically, as I said with Black Paradox, very Junji Ito. Very much enjoyed this one. Okay, and the last two were books that were on Kindle Unlimited, a part of various series that they did, one for the holidays, one for Halloween holidays, so yeah, and they're both in collections of short stories. Seeing a theme here, I really enjoyed a lot of short stories recently. So this first book that I'll talk about out of the two is Fallen, which was the second book in the Scared Sexy collection, and this particular installment into the collection was by Christina Lauren. It was monster romance, and this is about one seductive immortal who has powers of persuasion. He has always had control of this since he became an immortal, and it works every time until he meets the one woman who is able to quite easily resist him. I was quite on board with the first couple of chapters for this novella, but I quickly ended up just not really vibing with it. I wasn't really a big fan of the setting of it, and I really disliked how fast-paced everything felt. Like, I know this is a short story, it's a novella, whatever, but it just felt way too rushed. Insta love was in this as well, which I really dislike. There is a kind of reasoning around it, and yeah, it does get explained later, but generally speaking, it wasn't doing it for me. And it also ended really abruptly too. I read the last couple of pages like twice over because I thought I missed something. I also had the narration on at the same time. With these ones, you have the option to listen to the audiobook too. And yeah, it just, I thought, okay, I'm missing something, let me go back and read it. And I wasn't. It just kind of ended, and I'm honestly left wanting more. Like, I don't know, I'm in two minds. Some part of me wouldn't be adverse to like a follow-up or a sequel, but I also don't think there is a follow-up or a sequel, and I don't think it's from a wider series. I think it was literally just a novella, as the other books in this series, that was written for this collection of books, and that's it. But that on its own, it's just not satisfying. There needs to be more to wrap it up. It feels like it has come from an expanded work. Do you know what I mean? And this almost feels like an excerpt of that. And I don't think it is. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I ended up giving it a 2 out of 5 stars, unfortunately. And I didn't have any plans to read Christina Lauren before. And if there's not like a continuation or a follow-up to this story, then yeah, I probably still wouldn't go out of my way to read anything by this author duo again. That sounds really harsh, but I hadn't had intentions before, and this was falling in the sort of genre that I was interested in, and it fell flat for me. So yeah, the last book was my second ever Ali Hazelwood book that I've read, the first one being last month, and that was in the same series as the Scared Sexy collection. This time this is in another collection on Kindle Unlimited called Under the Mistletoe collection, and this was the first book in that series called Cruel Winter with You. It's contemporary romance, holiday romance, very cozy wintry story. So this is about two former childhood friends who are trapped indoors basically during a winter storm, and some frosty and scorching memories begin to stir and rise to the surface when they finally get talking. So this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. I finished it last night and I really enjoyed it, so much more than I was expecting. For such a short story, this one was a perfect example of characters that really had depth and a little bit of complexity and a backstory, and just felt like we already knew them. I personally hate the miscommunication trope, but although it was included in this story, and I guess it was like the main theme, you might say, it felt subtle, so much so that I didn't even realise that there was a miscommunication trope included in this until the end. I'm probably just like gullible in that way, but it it wasn't standing out. I wasn't hitting my head saying just talk. It was just a subtle like thing, you know, it worked. It really worked for this. And by the end I was all giddy and excited, kicking my legs and smiling from ear to ear. It was really cute. I really enjoyed it. So before I go, I want to quickly go over some current reads. So on my Kindle, I do have another Kindle Unlimited book that I'm reading, and that is The Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon, which is a monster romance. And I feel like this author has been kind of like the top recommendation every time I've asked around for this genre of books. So trying that out. It is pretty dark to start with, but apparently the rest of the series isn't as dark. We're following a girl who gets beamed up by aliens. Something happens, I think like a malfunction on their spaceship, and they end up having to lose the cargo. The cargo is a bunch of human girls that they stole, basically, for human trafficking. And they end up on this ice planet. Yeah, it's supposed to be really sexy and raunchy and intense. So I've not got to any like shagging yet, but I think that's going to be imminent. I'm also reading this cozy, cute rom-com style contemporary book called My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. And yeah, I'm enjoying this so far. I feel like a lot of people have already read this, so I'm not going to go into too much depth. But a girl sees an ad for dirt cheap for a room that's being let out, and she decides to go for it because she is about to get evicted and possibly taken to court in the next week if she doesn't leave immediately. And yeah, the roommate is a vampire. We've just got to the part where this discussion is taking place. I'm on page 121 and I'm having a really good time with it. I'm enjoying it. It's quite fun. Yeah, that's what I'm going into December with. But anyway, on to the wrapping up of this video, shall we? So that is all the books that I read during November. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I shall catch you in another one soon.